And so the sites are now opening. Just so you know, we'd like to imagine that because you're off clinical hold in the U.S. and you've off voluntary hold in Europe, that the next day the sites would be ready to go. But I don't imagine that's the case. So I'm assuming that they have to go back to their IRBs, and there's institutional things that you have to do to get them up and running. And is that accurate? And that's why we'll see sites slowly come online.
Right, that's exactly accurate. So yeah, the FDA lifted their hold, and they also said they're happy for us to start our phase 3 study in the US. So that's really great news. And then every site has to go through their own IRB review. So every site, that takes a different amount of time. For some it's relatively short, and for some it's long, but it's important that every site feels comfortable with the study, and that's part of their normal process. In the US, because sites had not been opened yet, there's also a few steps they have to do to this so-called get activated. But we can do those in parallel with the IRB review. So for the most part, we do expect the US sites to start opening within the next several weeks. And again, some will be a little longer than others, but it's really exciting that now we're really right there.
It is. We waited a long time for this study to open. And we talked, I think we talked all of the time or many times about international patients. How has Pfizer, or have you had discussions about how recruitment should go, and if international patients are included, and anything about recruitment that you can shed some light on?
Yeah, so a couple of things. I mean, one thing to be clear on is we don't have any quotas for specific countries or specific sites. We don't really hold spots for anybody. So enrollment will continue globally until we've completed enrollment for the study. The sites outside of the US are also going through their process of regulatory review and IRB review. They call it ethics committees overseas, but similar process. And everybody has their own timeline, so we don't control any of that. But we'll just continue to screen and enroll patients as we can. Then in terms of sort of, cross-border participation, we don't control the selection of participants for any particular site. That's really the responsibility of the investigator and their site staff. However, we have made all the sites aware of concerns that can occur with cross-border participation, mostly to make sure that everybody involved, both the site and the family, is aware of all the potential things that they need to think about and that could pose some problems down the line, to make sure that they're really fully informed and have thought of everything so that they don't sign up and then get surprised. So we've tried to make the sites really aware of that so they can have very informed conversations with the patients and their families.
Good, thank you. So we've talked about also these families are in the informed consent, and certainly following the protocol, there is a 5-year follow-up on that. So can you shed a little light on what does that mean in terms of 5-year follow-up? Is that a phone call? Is that a site visit? What is all involved in the 5-year follow-up?
Right, so for our patients, they do have to come back to the site. It's not very frequently. It's I think what most patients do for their own sort of physician follow-up. But we want to be able to collect both information on safety on a regular basis, but we also want to know about efficacy. So we want to know things about their ambulatory status and their North Star score, things like that. So we do have them come back at those sort of infrequent intervals. And we do know that 5 years is a long time for anybody to commit to anything, to be honest. But for these families and for patients, and the kids are going to be growing up, and there's going to be lots of changes. So we understand that it's a big commitment and can be a lot to take on. We do really want to encourage people who have signed up for the study to hang in there. We try and provide as much support as we can, both financially and in other ways, just so that they don't, we provide the travel support, for example. But I think it's going to be important for the community to really understand how this plays out in the long term, both safety and efficacy. So that's why we're hoping that patients really are able to, to hang in there through the 5 years.